Disclaimer: this video is of humorous nature only. The author does not seek to insult or humiliate anyone. The video may contain profanity. People under the age of 16 should refrain from watching this video. Story 1. Accommodation to avoid any conflict. At the time, I was working through a lot of childhood trauma, and I didn't know better. Now I do. I lost my identity trying endlessly to please him so he wouldn't abandon me. But he was going to do that anyway. You can't and shouldn't have to earn love from people, and them betraying and disrespecting you is a cue to exit, not a sign to try harder. Story 2. Lack of communication. He never told me about what he thought or how he feels about our relationship. Those feelings just compounded over time until he ultimately called it quits. I wish he talked to me. We could have figured it out together. I was always in the dark and didn't even see the breakup coming. Hurts, but I think it was just meant to be. Communicate with your partner. Be transparent. Helps both parties. Story 3. He told us we shouldn't talk to our individual friends about our relationship issues because they'll always take our side. 3 days before our breakup, he talked to 2 friends about our relationship issues, and yes, they took his side. Meanwhile, I'd been telling my friends everything was fine with us when it wasn't, and looking back, if I had spoken to friends about it, I would have had the strength to break things off a lot sooner. Story 4. Trying to communicate with someone who couldn't receive or recognize healthy communication, and then not ending things as soon as he turned resentful and cold towards me, but foolishly thinking that somehow we could communicate as to why he was suddenly treating me poorly. Even if you create a safe space for communication, if the other person isn't willing to do so, it's pointless. It's silly now to think that I ruined the relationship for being open and transparent. Story 5. Leaving my car unlocked. My best friend moved away to go to school. I went to pick her up and bring her home to visit every once in a while. She was super homesick in the beginning of her freshman year, even though it was only like an hour and a half away. She didn't drive at the time. One time I went and got her and brought her home to celebrate a birthday. The get-together was at my now ex-boyfriend's house in a safe neighborhood where I must have parked 1,000 times with no problem. We were so excited to be with our friends, and the drive was so long, rush hour on the DCMD Beltway, that we left her bags and stuff in the trunk of my car. We had so nuck fun that night. In the cold light of day, we realized I'd left my car unlocked, like I always did before this, and someone had gone into it, opened the trunk from the inside of the car, and stolen her laptop with all her school stuff on it. Our families weren't well off, and she had worked so hard and saved forever to buy that computer, an irreplaceable baby blanket she still slept with. No judgment, please. I am 35 and still sleep with a stuffed animal my sisters gave me. She was 18 at the time, and this was her first time away from home, and a photo album of hers. Again, remember the aforementioned homesickness. Only her stuff was stolen. Looked everywhere and couldn't find her things. In the end, she rightly blamed me for not locking my car. I took her home. We both cried, and I was apologizing profusely, but that was the end of our friendship. Every time we saw each other after that, it was so awkward because I could tell she resented me for the loss, and it would have been obvious to anyone that I was desperate for her to forgive me. Before that, we had been like sisters. We were in a band and everything. Anyway, later found out it was our mutual friend who was at the party. He'd even helped us look. I found out because 10 years later, he and I were hanging out. He got so drunk that he started oversharing, and he told me he did it because he was jealous of our friendship. He ended up doing other sociopathic things. I gave him the benefit of the doubt for way too long, but I finally cut him out of my life. Way too late. He still texts me every once in a while saying we should hang out like none of it happened. I really miss her to this day, almost 2 decades later. Story 6. If she's only ever been with toxic guys, don't ever think you'll be the hero who shows her what true love is. My ex had been in an abusive relationship and gotten cheated on countless times by the same guy before she met me. I thought I could be the one to show her how she should be loved, and I did. But because I was the first one in her dating history to do so, Her as well as her family treated me like the second coming of Jesus. I was locked in, but her past meant she couldn't trust me at all even if I did nothing wrong. It meant we got in stupid fights over her nitpicking things to be mad about. She didn't know how to be in a healthy relationship, and it felt like she refused to learn. I just felt used. I went from hero to the nice guy who gets walked all over. When I decided I couldn't take it anymore, I broke up with her, and her family really couldn't understand why. They thought we were endgame, but they never saw what she would say to me, what she would cause arguments about, and her refusal to face her past and deal with it. Instead, she just tried to act like it never happened. We broke up after I told her I couldn't take it anymore, and now she's in a happy relationship while I've been single since. It really messed me up watching her convince her family I was the bad guy, and then bringing home a new boyfriend only a couple months later. Got straight up replaced and had to allow a family I loved being around never think of me again. They had no idea what she did to me and what I did for her. It took a long time to realize I did the right thing. I tried to help her over and over and over and over again. We dated for 2 years, and it just never got better. I was treated like a cheater, and I couldn't find a way to really prove to her that I never would. She just couldn't trust me no matter what, not because of me, but because of the guy before her. That crap is ass man. Story 7. Putting up with things but complaining about them instead of running from them red flags. Because you want a relationship to work, instead of realizing this person is an idiot and leaving. But safe to say, that was a very long time ago, and I've moved on. If you're having to ask for human normal decency but think it's just because they a bit blind, but I'll help them see. Get out and get therapy, because maybe you went through something before this. Story 8. I've tanked a lot of relationships by thinking everything needed to be fixed. I almost did it in the one I'm in. He's in a bad mood. He's being snappy with me. We need to fix this. I need to sit down and have a heart-to-heart. I need to communicate that he's hurting my feelings right now. I'm overly therapist and really thought this was the best way to handle everything. My current. So and I went through a lot of therapy apart, and together, ironically, to work on this, because with him, this is what happens. He gets angry and stews and will never bring the thing up to me until I coax it out of him. The suggested way to handle this was, surprisingly, less communication. I feel like we're in a better place when he can be acting like a total reactive self-gratification. Idiot, and instead of being like, "Have I upset you? I must have because you're treating me really weirdly and you're in an awful mood. I just want to get to the bottom of this." I can be like, "Your vibe is positively ass. You need to take a nap or something. If I did something to upset you that's making you act like this, I'll be open to talk about it later today. But right now, I think we're both just annoyed. I'm going to go do the rest of my day alone. I hope you feel better." Then I get home and it's 50-50. "Yeah, I'm sorry. You did this thing last week that really upset me, and I've taken time to think about how I want to address it calmly. And, yeah, I have no idea what that was about. I think I didn't get enough breakfast and it made me moody. I'm glad you had a good day after that." But either way, we're both totally calm by the time we talk about it. Story 9. Kinda 3-9. I'm going to say the unpopular thing and say that I didn't make a mistake. While I can be honest enough to admit that I am not perfect and I did plenty of things wrong, I was truly the only one who actively worked on the relationship or ever seemed to care what it felt like for us. I wanted us to check in with one another, share our goals and plans, communicate. He wanted us to be like roommates. He wanted me to staffoo and take care of crap at home while he took care of crap out of home. If I spoke with him about any detail that was not specifically important in his opinion, he wasn't interested in listening at all. He regularly spent as much time alone and in his room as possible. I can honestly say that I passed years of my life with someone who could not even have a regular conversation with me. After 13 years, I don't believe that man knew a single thing about me, and he actively chose to not know. Arguably, That could be a common mistake that he made that could be the answer to the question, but it's even more common than that. He kept a physical, verbal, and emotional distance from me, and instead would cheat on me. It's really sad how often cheating is the answer. Story 10. In my last relationship, I was with someone who had an addiction. Since I had tried light drugs before, the whole relationship brought me down. When I got out of that relationship and met someone new who was super nice and decent, I messed things up by telling him about my past drug use up front. He made it clear that he didn't approve of it. I told him I would stop and that I wouldn't let something silly like that ruin a good relationship. After 3 months of being together, he wanted some space to figure out how to proceed because of his stressful job, frequent travel, and recent divorce. I gave him the space, but then I slipped back into drug use myself. Long story short, I lost a great man because of drugs. Story 11. She expected me to know why she was mad at me without communicating to me at all about what was bothering her. I'm completely open to correcting reasonable things that bother a partner, but I can't do that if you don't tell me what it is. I broke up with her after she was all pissy and telling me I should know exactly why she's mad for 2 days. Eventually, she relented and told me she was mad that I watched a new episode of a show we normally watch together, which, granted, I did do. But that was the final straw in the no communication issues we had. Story 12. Covert contracts are premeditated resentment. I was a poor communicator and he was very controlling. I'm generally avoidant and he's generally enmeshed. I didn't think to say, I need a half hour to decompress alone after work so I can show up to our together time more positively, since I spend 8 hours managing people. He worked alone from home, just researching crypto for a bit and cleaning his downstairs Airbnbs if needed. So when I got home, he was like a puppy asking what we were going to make for dinner together and what we were going to do for fun. I didn't think to say, I'm exhausted after work, and I feel like since you work shorter hours and are home all day, you can make dinner most nights since I also could literally just eat a girl dinner, 2 pickles and some cashews, and be fine with it. But to him, making dinner together was our quality time. Eventually, our qualms would come up in fights, but we didn't really resolve much. We just grew disrespectful and resentful, and it came out in weird ways. I learned a lot from it, but there are a few scars that I've brought to other relationships. Getting better at voicing my concerns, though. Story 13. Doing too ducking much and getting nothing in return. I did this grown man laundry, I cooked, I cleaned, I bathed the animals. He did duck all except cheat on me. When I asked why he didn't leave, because clearly he didn't love me. He said, I just loved having someone to come home to. Now and happily married, and we just had our daughter. He still stalks me on social media, I'm sure because he had 1 million burner accounts and I couldn't possibly remember the names for all of them to block them. Story 14. Jealousy. I made this mistake for years. Once I had my heart broken enough times, I kinda just gave up and went along with whatever in relationships. You want to go out to lunch with some other guy? Great, have fun, bye. As soon as my attitude shifted to, I don't give an ever loving what you do. I'll drive you to your date with another guy. Just leave me alone. Women basically refuse to leave me. Attention-seeking behavior from other men is no longer part of the equation because I don't care at all. I think a big part of it was just that I clearly defined that I would break up with someone if they cheated on me. End of story. And if someone is going to behave like that, it's on them. I'm not going to play games. And so they don't try anything. They just chill and are obsessed with me all the time. Story 15. I was dating a bi girl who introduced me to a female friend of hers. The 3 of us hung out one night at a party and didn't do anything but talked about having a threesome and all exchanged numbers. She was fine with the exchange. I even asked her. Her friend texted me once or twice being friendly and I responded, but we never met up, never called each other, and never did anything on our own. Threesome never happened, with her anyway, and months went by. My ex found out about the text exchange months later and absolutely lost it. She went bananas. She asked me why I never shared the texts with this girl. Nothing I said or did could convince her I wasn't trying to smash her friend. I gave her my phone to go through, and she even went through her friend's phone and threatened to beat her up. The paranoia got more and more unhinged until I was genuinely happy she finally broke up with me. Story 16. My parents are lawyers, and his dad is a carpenter who was working in a different country, while his mom doesn't have a job. We've been together since the end of high school. I was ambitious and eager to go to university, while he didn't have an idea what he should do with his life. So I encouraged him to go to university with me. In the first 2 years of university was so hard. We had multiple fights over the years because my grades were excellent, and I always took every exam on the first try. But he was struggling. His parents didn't support him at all. They were fighting because their expectation was that he should make money instead of studying for a better future. I was fighting with him because his grades were average and his performance wasn't the best. Sometimes I felt like it was all my fault because I just wanted to save him from his own parents and his own vision of the future. Story 17. I got a tad too insecure about her talking to a male friend. She told me not to worry because they were just reconciling their friendship, but they texted throughout the day, even when she was at my place. The mistake was holding on to her while she already clearly was moving on emotionally. Maybe because I was pushing her away with my actions. But 2 days after we broke up, they got into a relationship. Story 18. Getting married before I'd embraced my true individuality because it conflicted with the conservative values I was raised with. I was lying to myself more and therefore unintentionally lying to my partner. Oh, the other mistake was falling victim to the sink cost fallacy multiple times between the first sign of incompatibility and the most recent backing out of a divorce. Oh, and having a kid to fix things. Story 19. IDK if it's applicable, but 10 days into my 19-day trip to Japan, I was both physically sick and homesick. So during train journeys and all, to get some sense of comfort, I'd zone out on the train and just listen to podcasts while playing some games on my phone. Also, the drain of daily outings for the whole day for 10 days was taking its impact. My friend mistook it as me being upset about the trip, and me having a RBF doesn't help. We haven't spoken since, and had to hear from a mutual friend that he wants nothing to do with me anymore. IDK, I used to be insanely distraught about it since it happened during the festive season, but I guess the past few weeks I finally started to make peace with it. It still hurts, but I'm finally moving on. Story 20. Trying to do everything I could to make him more comfortable, to unhealthy extents. He had a short fuse, so I often ignored my own wants and needs in order to not stir the pot. This included not directly telling him when he overstepped boundaries as to not hurt his ego and risk him getting pouty. It meant not having a talk about what I wanted and needed in bed because he had expressed exasperation when what he tried wasn't working for me, and I didn't want to further hurt his ego. It included walking on eggshells when he struggled with his mental health. It included doing everything his way, or trying to at the very least, which resulted in an unbalanced relationship and me feeling like I wasn't an equal, which was actually one of the reasons for the eventual breakup. Story 21. I wasn't enigmatic enough. Anything abundant isn't valuable. So being excited to be with the woman you love and expressing that love through deeds and consideration was too much. I didn't know. I was so in love, it was like being on drugs. But when she left me, she said, "Girls are weird. You need to say no. You need to not come over when I ask you to not answer the call on the first ring, to not text back in under a minute." She was right. High-value fit women don't want love, affection, or kind deeds. They want intrigue, surprise, and to be interested. It was the hardest lesson of my life. I sure wish she could have been the love of my life instead of the lesson that made me 10x the man I was. But such is life. Story 22. I think it was being too afraid to talk about some issues we may or may not have, just because I was afraid of the possibility of breaking up. And guess what? She broke up, lol. I became too comfortable too, I think. But on another hand, she could have communicated about the problems so we can solve it together. But she was too afraid of hurting me, but ended up hurting me more. But maybe it's too soon to know exactly. Since it was 2 weeks, she ended things. Story 23. Not spending quality time together. Those were the times that I was so drained by my job that I don't even have the energy to do my skincare. All I wanted to do is to sleep after a very tiring day. I'm a sleepyhead BW. We rarely meet each other. I feel bad every time I wasn't able to meet him. If she wants to, she will. Is easier to be said than done. Until one day, he fell out of love. Story 24. Going along to get along. Basically, not communicating wants and needs effectively. Not taking the time to check in with each other and actually hear what the other person has to say about how they think, and, more importantly, feel on things, especially big decisions. Not everything needs to be a long, drawn-out conversation, but neither partner should feel like they're unable to share their side perspective on things. It only leads to assumptions, resentments, and hurt. Story 25. One of my exes. She tried telling me I was insecure and jealous because I let it upset she slept with her ex-boyfriend. She apparently needed closure. She told me she cheated and I was insecure jealous over dinner at a restaurant, so I wouldn't make a scene. I politely excused myself, said I needed to use the bathroom, got in my car, and drove home. She was 35+ miles from home. I stuck her with the dinner bill and a $130 cab ride home. I guess my mistake was being insecure. She said a secure man wouldn't have a problem with their girlfriend sleeping with someone else. Story 26. Before I knew it was a faux pas, a guy I was seeing sent me a shirtless pic on Snapchat. I wasn't a regular and I thought he looked great and wanted to save it to enjoy looking at. It wasn't a dirty picture and I thought this would be flattering. Also had no idea he would know I took a screenshot. Well, he did. And he lost his mind over it and I never saw him again. I still maintain it was flattering, and maybe he should have been a little more understanding and given me a chance to just delete it and move on. Story 27. Don't ever think you know a person after you met and both of you were high drunkets, even highly caffeinated if you ask me, and then continue to date while high or drunk, etc. You don't know the person. It was doomed from the start. But hey, I was young and missed a lot of good experiences. Simple because I followed my peers and got high or drunk while going out. Also, I missed out on good leading figures like parents or even peer groups that had healthy and happy relationships. You learn a lot from people who have healthy relationships. Story 28. Not going to bed angry. Fighting through hours of exhaustion just to relent and go to bed, only to wake up resentful, was not healthy. Going to sleep was a sign that the conversation was over, and bringing it up the next day was just wanting to start a fight. It's so much healthier to accept the conversation isn't going anywhere and go to bed even if both parties are still upset. Wake up the next day level-headed and well-rested and pick back up on the conversation. You'll find it's so much easier to communicate rather than bickering through exhaustion at 2 a.m. Story 29. Trying to include him in my life when he clearly wanted to keep me separated from his. Knowing he was lying or omitting things. Accepting abuse that he disguised as jokes and allowed his friends to do the same. Then, when some traumatic events happened to me, assuming I'd never find any better. We were both unhappy. He ended up using me. His friends literally, almost said, "We were here first. You need to accept our abuse because that's how we show love." I think he got a crazy one pregnant after 1 month of dating. I upgraded. Story 30. Not loving myself enough causing me to settle for less than I deserved. I enabled abuse and manipulation because I wasn't healthy myself. I didn't love myself enough to say no more and allowed a lot of things in my kids and my life I shouldn't have. It's my duty to heal myself so that my lack of confidence and self-love doesn't bring dysfunction to my kid's doorstep. Oh, he did plenty things wrong, and I'm not responsible for him being an abusive puss. But I am responsible for what I will and won't allow in my and my kids' lives. Story 31. I find myself struggling to express my true thoughts to my friends, which has ultimately led to the deterioration of our friendship. Jude, haha. It pains me to know that I am unable to effectively communicate with them, causing misunderstandings and conflicts. Despite my best efforts, I feel like there is a barrier between us that prevents me from truly opening up and being vulnerable. My inability to connect on a deeper level leaves me feeling lost and frustrated. Haha. Haste! All I want right now is a shoulder to lean on and a beer. Story 32. I thought following my partner around the world would give me at least some say in when we went home or where we went next. Turns out I was wrong. After turning my life upside down multiple times, stopping my career in its tracks and leaving me in a place I didn't want to be, she booked travel to her next destination without any discussion and said, "You can come with me if you want." I said no more, and that was the last time I saw her. Story 33. My ex broke up with me because he was significantly younger and wasn't ready for the level of commitment he knew I would expect in a few years. I took the breakup way too personally, so cut off all communication with him. Years later, I regret not being able to see it from his perspective. Had I had more empathy for his side of it, maybe we would have stayed friends, and then who knows? Maybe timing could have worked out later down the road. But oh well, life goes on. Story 34. I got sick. Almost 19 years of taking care of her after surgeries, mental breakdowns, ADHD problems, her working stupid late hours, which required me to keep up the house and childcare. Then I got sick, and she has to help me and pick up on the things I can't do anymore not even 6 months later of my illness, and she's wanting a divorce, knowing I will get better. I'm sure there were other things making her think of divorce, but my illness is the last straw. Story 35. At the end of our relationship, I decided I wanted to choose for myself and do what I really wanted to do. I wanted to say goodbye to her family and thank them for the great time I had with them, which she didn't want me to, because we were figuring stuff out between us. She did not like that and got insanely mad at me for at least a month, basically blew the relationship up and really ended it with a negative atmosphere. Story 36. Expectations. I expected him to care like I did, be honest with me, make time for us to spend time actually. Like me, have the same level or respect for me. I gave to him be a decent person, not use his children and other family members to help the lies. Expectations is what ruined my experience with that man. Story 37. As a lifelong F1 fan, I've had someone bash my favorite drivers on purpose for a reaction and to make me upset, even though they know duck all about the sport and goes by comments on here and Facebook. May sound petty, but to me was a warning to how they actually felt about my feelings. I'm used to other fans saying all sorts, but not someone who said they loved you. Story 38. He wouldn't make any time for me, but I wouldn't join him when he did his hobbies, hunting, fishing, snowmobiling, etc. either. He was always busy doing other things, so we never spent time together. But he invited me to join him on fishing trips or to go snowmobiling, and I said no every time. Neither of us would budge. Took 2 years, but it destroyed the relationship. Story 39. It wasn't a relationship per se, but I asked, "How come you are wearing your engagement ring again?" She wasn't, but the camera flipped the image, which looked like she was. I was dumb, and I was very, very smitten, and I wanted her so much. I just brought back her traumas from her previous relationship. I kick myself every day for messing up so badly. Story 40. I rose my voice against her when I said I wanted more initiation on her end. Well, that ended up with her screaming back and broke up with me. Lol. Whatever. What came out of it is I found the love of my life in one of my friends that cheered me up. My boyfriend is truly the best partner a man could ask for. Story 41. She would talk crap about me to her friends. I told her that was messed up, BC. I haven't and would never do that to her. I want to fix things between us two alone, but she told me it's normal behavior to talk crap about other people. She then cut me out of her life shortly after, and I've always assumed that's the reason why. Story 42. Not leaving after he crossed the line. The second chances be sometimes, and I wish I'd hit a small but big enough lottery to financially make the move. I didn't think ahead. I should have been putting money away the entire time. But I trusted in the future. I only have one time every year to go. I think about it all the time. Story 43. Addiction. I lost the lost of my life and the woman I still want to marry because of my drug and alcohol addiction at the time. We also have a kid together, and every time I see her with our daughter, I get a pang of regret that I chose my addiction and lying about how bad it was over just getting clean. Story 44. Not heeding red flags and ending things when I should have. I ignored the red flags that presented themselves and didn't end things, which ultimately prolonged how long our relationship dragged on by several months. I'm glad I finally started paying attention because it was pretty apparent things were never going to work once I did. Story 45. I once made the mistake of assuming my partner could read my mind. I kept my feelings bottled up, thinking they would somehow understand what I needed without me having to say it outright. Eventually, this led to misunderstandings and tension in our relationship. I learned the hard way that clear communication is essential in any relationship. Story 46. I wouldn't kiss my girlfriend in front of my extremely homophobic friends and grandparents who didn't know we were dating. She broke up with me and said, I shouldn't care what they think. I agree with her in some ways, but I'm pretty sure my grandma would send me to the gates if she saw me kiss a girl. Story 47. For me personally, with my previous relationship, it was letting other people into our intimate life. Threesomes and foursomes sound fun, and they were, but our relationship never felt the same after we started bringing other people in. I'm glad other people have positive experiences with it, but I believe not keeping intimacy between us ruined our relationship. Thank you all for watching. Watch even more great stories on my channel.